Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a fascinating dive right into the heart of governance, administration, and moral philosophy. We're going to completely decode a highly complex UPSC General Studies paper for ethics case study. Now, whether you're a dedicated aspirant grinding for the civil services, or honestly just someone who loves untangling deep, real-world administrative dilemmas, this explainer is designed to help you master the art of ethical decision-making. We're going to take some very real legislation, drop it straight into a high-stakes fictional scenario, and then use some of history's greatest philosophical minds to guide our way out. Okay, let's map out exactly where we're headed. We'll start with the MMDR context, jump into Rohit Deshmukh's dilemma, map out the conflicting stakeholders, evaluate the options, and wrap up with some long-term institutional reforms. Section 1. The MMDR context and the facts of the 2026 bill. Right, so to truly grasp the ethics of our case study, we've got to look at the real-world facts that actually trigger the scenario, because ethics don't just exist in a vacuum, right? They happen in the real world, driven by actual laws. So our foundation starts right here. On August 13, 2026, the Mines and Minerals Amendment Bill drops. And what does it do? Crucially, it allows mining leaseholders to add critical minerals to their existing leases. We're talking lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, gold, and silver. And it can do this without paying extra fees. It also completely removes the 50% sale limit on captive mines. Basically, once a captive mine meets its own internal needs, it can just sell the rest of those minerals straight on the open market. The strategic goal here is absolutely massive. It's designed to boost investment and hit national self-reliance in clean energy, specifically for things like EV batteries. It is a huge, aggressive push for economic and strategic independence. But hold on, because that rapid expansion brings us face to face with a really profound concept: intergenerational equity. This is our moral obligation to meet our current needs without passing the heavy burden of environmental degradation, stuff like massive land erosion and water pollution, onto future generations. And it highlights this incredible tension. Yes, we absolutely need lithium for clean energy today, but the aggressive mining required to get it might literally destroy the forests and watersheds that tomorrow's citizens are going to rely on to survive. So how do we balance today's progress with tomorrow's survival? Moving on to Section 2, Rohit Deshmukh's dilemma, our fictional case study. Now, keep in mind, while the mining bill is entirely real, this is a fictional scenario built specifically to test your ethical decision-making skills in a real pressure cooker of an environment. I want you to meet Rohit Deshmukh. Actually, put yourself right in his shoes. You are the state director of the Department of Mining and Geology. Under the new national mineral policy, a massive company has proposed a lithium mining project in a tribal forest area. Technically and financially, the proposal is bulletproof. It's 100% valid. It promises immense revenue and a ton of employment for your state. But your department's field survey reveals a glaring issue. This mining area directly impacts the traditional forest livelihoods and the vital watershed of 3 tribal villages. And even more importantly, the local Gram Sabhas, the village councils, have not yet given their formal consent, which is legally required under forest rights laws. And you, as Rohit, are facing intense, crushing political and economic pressure to just push this project through immediately. So the ultimate question is this: do you prioritize national strategic policy and massive state revenue, or do you prioritize constitutional indigenous tribal rights and ecological stability? I want you to really think about this. What would you actually do under that kind of pressure? Well, before we answer that, a good administrator needs to take a step back and understand exactly who is sitting at the table. Which brings us to Section 3, Mapping Conflicting Stakeholders. Who is actually at risk here? You can see how deeply all these interests clash. It's a complete web of conflict. First up, we've got Rohit himself, totally torn between his administrative duty to foster economic growth and his absolute obligation to uphold legal and ethical processes. Then there's the tribal community, fighting for their traditional forest livelihood, their water sources, and really their cultural existence against the very real threat of displacement. Meanwhile, the mining company just wants to execute a perfectly valid business proposal to meet a national need, but they're hitting major delays and local pushback. The state government is caught right in the middle between the allure of massive revenue and jobs versus long-term ecological stability. And finally, the central government is trying to balance the whole nation's strategic mineral self-reliance against the constitutional protections guaranteed to indigenous populations. It is literally a perfect storm. Section 4, Evaluating the Options Using a Philosophical Framework. All right,
Now we shift into the ethical evaluation, because we aren't just going to guess what Rohit should do, we're going to bring in some legendary philosophical theories to weigh his choices. Let's look at the two absolute extreme options he has on the table. Option 1 is to just bow to the pressure, treat the Gram Sabha's formal consent as a mere technicality, and ram the project through for quick approval. Option 2 is the exact opposite. Completely oppose the project, stop it dead in its tracks, accept a massive economic loss for the state, and just brace for a major clash with the central government.
Let's put option 1 to the test using Immanuel Kant. Now, Kantian ethics tell us that humans, and by extension entire communities, must always be treated as an end in themselves, never merely as a means to an end. So if Rohit chooses option 1, he's basically treating the tribal communities simply as a tool, or just an annoying obstacle to be bypassed for the sake of economic growth. Ignoring their consent just to achieve development makes this option ethically unacceptable, according to Kant. Development simply cannot demand the sacrifice of a vulnerable community's basic rights.
Okay, what about option 2? Let's bring in Aristotle and his concept of the golden mean. Aristotle argued that true virtue lies in the desirable middle ground between two extremes, one extreme being excess and the other being deficiency. While completely stopping the project shows a ton of moral courage, it's an excess of opposition. By just shutting down entirely without even trying to seek a dialogue or find alternatives, Rohit would be completely ignoring the state's legitimate economic interests and the nation's broader strategic needs. It's just too extreme.
And that brings us to option 3, the sweet spot. In this scenario, Rohit mandates that the Gram Sabha consent process and an independent environmental impact assessment must absolutely be completed. But at the exact same time, he initiates a time-bound dialogue between the mining company and the state government to create a rock-solid proposal for the local community, structuring concrete profit sharing and a really comprehensive rehabilitation plan. This right here is the balanced path. And this brilliantly illustrates John Rawls' theory of justice. Rawls essentially argued that a truly just policy must first secure the position of the weakest and most vulnerable in society before you even start considering other benefits. By insisting on the Gram Sabha's consent and an environmental assessment first, option 3 lines up perfectly with Rawls. It protects the tribal community's rights before securing the state's economic gains. To top it all off, this option is firmly cemented by Mahatma Gandhi's principle of Gram Swaraj. Gandhi believed that local community consent and participation is the very first condition of true development, not just some afterthought you tack on at the end. Option 3 respects the legal process, prioritizes environmental conservation, and still leaves the door wide open for economic development if it can actually be done justly. It proves that development and conservation do not have to be enemies. With the right process, they can totally be brought together. Finally, Section 5, Institutional Reforms. Looking beyond the immediate dilemma. So, Rohit might survive this specific crisis, but true administrative excellence requires looking way beyond the immediate dilemma to fix the underlying system itself. That's the real game changer. So here are 4 actionable long-term reforms to balance resource exploitation with community rights. Step 1, legally mandate that Gram Sabha consent and environmental impact assessments are time-bound for all major mining projects. Let's completely remove that bureaucratic limbo. Step 2, make it legally mandatory to allocate a fixed percentage of mineral revenues directly into local community welfare funds. Step 3, create a highly transparent regulatory and revenue-sharing framework between the center and the states regarding minerals, ensuring cooperative federalism. And Step 4, establish independent ecological monitoring committees that continuously track the environmental impact right alongside the mining progress, truly honoring the precautionary principle. All right, we have broken down the facts, analyzed the stakeholders, applied some truly brilliant philosophical frameworks, and proposed systemic reforms. Now, it is your turn. Here's your homework. If you were the one in power, sitting in that chair, how would you balance pressing national strategic interests with environmental protection? And maybe more importantly, which thinker's theory would guide your hand? I want you to really let that question simmer. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer. Keep structuring those thoughts and